Questions without notice. The member for Hotham.
Mr Speaker, my question is to the Prime Minister. This Prime Minister voted against a Banking Royal Commission 26 times and called it a populist whinge. And last night, every member of the government voted against Labor's amendments to strengthen punishment for corporate criminals, with tougher 15-year jail sentences for the most serious crimes and bigger fines for misconduct. Isn't it the case that no matter what this Prime Minister pretends, he'll always stick up for the big banks and the top end of town?
The Prime Minister has the call.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. This Prime Minister, as Treasurer, instituted the Royal Commission on Banking and Finance. That Leader of the Opposition, all of those opposite, when they sat on the government benches, did absolutely nothing. I will allow the Treasurer to conclude the answer.
Just before I call the Treasurer, I'm just going to say to the House, it's not only disruptive, it's demeaning to the House, the level of interjections. And when I became Speaker, I said, of course, this is a debating chamber where there will be a vigorous debate, and there should be. But it doesn't have to be loud all the time or rude all the time. And some of the personal abuse that's coming out, I'm not going to yell back. I'm just giving fair warning. I'm going to deal with it. I really am. The Treasurer has the call.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. In 6 years, the Labor government did absolutely nothing to increase the penalties for misconduct. In fact, when the Leader of the Opposition was the Minister for Financial Services and Superannuation and Labor was in government, you had the collapse of Trio with 5,000 victims. You had Storm Financial, 4,000 clients suffering losses of up to $3 billion. You had Opus Prime with 1,200 investors. It's been left to this government to establish the Financial System Inquiry. It's been left to this government to establish the ASIC Enforcement Review Task Force, which involved an expert group. And this expert group had 3 professors, the President of the Law Council and the CEO of the Consumer Action Law Committee, Mr Speaker. And the bill before this parliament, which passed this House, was based on their recommendations, Mr Speaker, based on their recommendations. Now, as a result of the actions that this government has taken, we have increased criminal penalties for corporate misconduct for individuals 5-fold, Mr Speaker. We have increased civil penalties for corporations and their misconduct by 10-fold, Mr Speaker. But the other side of the House, the Labor Party, come in here engaged in a political stunt, Mr Speaker, a political stunt. And thank you to the crossbenchers who supported the government in defeating those amendments, Mr Speaker. But if that's not bad enough, what's happened in the Senate, Prime Minister, today is even worse. Because what the Labor Party has sought to do is to send the bill off to committee and defer the implementation of tougher penalties for another 6 months, Mr Speaker. Another 6 months. Another 6 months. So the people of Australia will not be protected from strong penalties against misconduct for months and months and months because of Labor's tactics. They're political stunts, Mr Speaker. It's an inconvenient truth for the Leader of the Opposition that on his watch and on Labor's watch you had the collapse of Trio, Storm and Opus. And it's an inconvenient truth for the Leader of the Opposition that's been left to the Liberal and National governments to increase penalties for misconduct for individuals 5-fold and to increase penalties for corporations 10-fold. Only the Coalition can be trusted to hold these financial institutions and individuals to account.
The member for Leichhardt.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr Speaker. And my question is to the Prime Minister. I note that next year our government is handing down a surplus budget as a product of a strong economy and the first one since the Howard Costello years. This means we can keep Australia safe without increasing taxes. Will the Prime Minister outline the consequences of an alternative approach?
The Prime Minister has the call.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I thank the member for Leichhardt for his question and the fact that he has noted that indeed this government, our government, the Liberal National Government, will hand down a surplus budget next year before we go to an election, and the Australian people will be able to see that quite plainly. As the member was putting forward his question, the Deputy Leader of the Labor Party said, "Oh, you've been in government for 5 years." Yes, and we're delivering a surplus. They were in government for 6 years and they took it from surplus to deficit, Mr Speaker. So it is true that in the budget that will be handed down by the Treasurer, it will come down as a surplus, and that has been achieved by the careful stewardship and financial management over that period of time, getting expenditure under control, getting taxes under control, and ensure we put the policies in place to grow a stronger economy, which is seeing a resurgence in corporate performance around the country. That plan for a stronger economy, yes, has got unemployment down to 5%, and it's meant 1.1 million and more jobs created since we were first elected. Economic growth running at 3.4% through the year, and I note today the median wage as of August has been up 5.4%. Now, that is a result of people getting more hours because of a stronger economy, and that is the strongest growth in the median wage in a 12-month period, Mr Speaker, for 13 years. For 13 years in the median wage growth, Mr Speaker, and that is welcome. And we've also had a growth in non-mining investment, again positive in the quarter, and that means we've had the longest-running growth in non-mining investment growth in 30 years. That's what the stronger economy is delivering, and that stronger economy, it does enable our government, that stronger economy, not higher taxes, a stronger economy to deliver the essential services that Australians rely on, and that is health, that is education, that is infrastructure, it is roads, it's pipelines up in Townsville, it's all of these things, Mr Speaker, but it is also keeping Australians safe. Our government has put in $2.2 billion worth of additional investments into our national security agencies, and in the budget that I had handed down back in May, $294 million for aviation security upgrades around our country, including $50 million for 64 regional airports, $121.6 million to enhance screening capability for inbound air cargo and international mail, $121.9 million to increase the presence and specialist capabilities of the Australian Federal Police and the Australian Border Force, $102 million put in place to manage biosecurity risks, $62.2 million for the continuation of Operation Sovereign Borders. Our government is enabled to live up to our national security credentials, where we lead, never follow, Mr Speaker, because we're delivering a stronger economy, which means we can invest in keeping Australians safe.
The Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. This Prime Minister has spent 2 years voting against a Banking Royal Commission 26 times, spent 3 years trying to give the big banks a $17 billion tax handout, and last night voted against tougher 15-year jail sentences for corporate criminals, whilst at the same time cutting billions from schools and hospitals. Why does the Prime Minister put big banks ahead of schools and hospitals?
The Prime Minister has to call.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Why does the Leader of the Labor Party lie all the time, Mr Speaker? Why does he do that? Why does he do that?
No, the Prime Minister needs to withdraw that. Members on both sides. Members on both sides will cease interjecting. The Manager of Opposition Business can resume his seat unless he's got something additional after I've dealt with this. Now, the Prime Minister needs to withdraw that word.
I withdraw, Mr Speaker. Mr Speaker, I could say, why does the Labor Party, why does the Leader of the Labor Party misrepresent the truth, Mr Speaker? Why do they do this all the time? At a time when our government, because of a stronger economy, is increasing investment in hospitals and schools and affordable medicines and all the essential services that we rely on, because of a stronger economy and a stronger budget, a budget that will be back in balance, in surplus, when we hand down the budget in April next year. This is delivering the essential services without increasing taxes, which is the Labor Party's plan, $200 billion and more in higher taxes that will suffocate the Australian economy, which will mean less jobs for Australians, less hours for Australians, lower wages for Australians, more services under risk, Mr Speaker, including affordable medicines, which we know when they were in government because they couldn't manage the budget, they couldn't grow the economy, they couldn't list life-saving medicines on the PBS, Mr Speaker. Now, our government has been dealing with the issues in the banking and financial sector for years. 4 years, the toughest banking executive accountability laws of this country has ever seen. A financial complaints authority that enables people to get actions and outcomes from their disputes without having to lawyer up, Mr Speaker. We initiated the Royal Commission into the banking and finance industry, and, Mr Speaker, those opposite, they talk, and it's talk, 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 and no action ever from the Leader of the Labor Party, Mr Speaker. Mr Speaker, it's the Literary Awards next week here in this chamber, and the Labor Party's policies will be making an entry in the fiction condition, Mr Speaker, because when it comes to the Labor Party, whenever they're talking, you know it's fiction.
The member for Murray.
Thank you, Treasurer. Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Treasurer. I note that our government is handing down a surplus budget, and that is a product of a strong economy. This means that we can fund essential services that Australians rely on without increasing taxes. Is the Treasurer aware of any other approaches to running the economy?
The Treasurer has the call.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I thank the member for Murray for his question. And he knows, and we know on this side of the House, that next year when we deliver the budget, it will be a budget surplus, Mr Speaker. A budget surplus, and it will be a surplus for every single Australian, Mr Speaker, across the economy. And we will do that without increasing taxes, Mr Speaker.
That's right.
We will do that without increasing taxes. And as the Prime Minister has said, the benefit of a strong economy is that you can provide the essential services that people need. And we have created jobs. Since coming to government, more than 1.1 million new jobs. More than 100,000 young people have got a job over the last year, the highest number on record, Mr Speaker. We are backing small business as the backbone of the Australian economy. We've provided tax cuts for 3.3 million small businesses. We're giving them greater access to finance. We're cutting $300 million worth of red tape. We have a $75 billion infrastructure project. More road, more rail, more airports, more dams and other water infrastructure, Mr Speaker. And our health spending, Mr Speaker. Health spending is at record levels, and since the government has come to power, we have put 1,900 additional medicines listed onto the PBS, Mr Speaker. When it comes to schools, there's more than $24 billion of additional funding going to Australia's schools, putting education funding at a record level. And when it comes to defence, Mr Speaker, a $200 billion defence plan that has commissioned 54 naval vessels to be built here in Australia, Mr Speaker. How many naval vessels
The Treasurer will just pause for a second. The member for McEwen, I think the member for Barker's completely missing the moment. He will leave under 94A. I don't think the member for McEwen had anything additional to raise. All right, then. The Treasurer has the call.
Mr Speaker, we have a $200 billion defence industry program that has commissioned 54 naval vessels to be built here in Australia. And how many naval vessels did the Labor Party commission during their term in government to be built here in Australia? None, Mr Speaker, none. Now, the alternative to this plan from the government that's creating jobs and lowering taxes is the Labor Party's plan to put $200 billion of additional taxes on the Australian economy. They will suffocate the Australian economy, Mr Speaker, with $200 billion of additional taxes. And what about negative gearing? Anyone who owns a home as a result of Labor's policy will see their home worth less. Under Labor's policy, anybody who rents their home under Labor policy will see their rents go up, Mr Speaker. What about retirees? 900,000 retirees will be worse off after Labor's desperate tax grab. And what about the carbon tax? It's coming back, Mr Speaker, as the member for Isaacs let out of the bag the other day. Only the coalition can be trusted to grow the economy, create jobs and to lower taxes.
The Deputy Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. What is the impact on Australia's international standing when last night Malcolm Turnbull tweeted, and I quote, "A centrist government was blown up in August and it wasn't done by the moderates"? Does the Prime Minister agree with Malcolm Turnbull? How does the Prime Minister explain to his international counterparts why Malcolm Turnbull is no longer the Prime Minister?
The Prime Minister has the call.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I agree with Malcolm Turnbull when he says that the leader of the Labor Party is the biggest risk to the Australian economy. That's what I agree with Malcolm Turnbull on, and have for many, many years, Mr Speaker. I agree with Malcolm Turnbull that supporting small and family business is the right way to grow the economy, and that's exactly what our government is doing, Mr Speaker. I agree with all of those who understand that a stronger economy is the way that you pay for essential services. And I agree, Mr Speaker, that it's a stronger economy that should be the way, not the higher taxes that are being proposed by the Labor Party. I also agree, Mr Speaker, that it is a reckless target to have a 45% emissions reduction target, not a 26% emissions reduction target. And the people who said that was the Business Council of Australia, who said the emissions target of 26% is appropriate and achievable. That's what the former Prime Minister also said was the case, and that 45% is an economy-wrecking target, Mr Speaker. The Labor Party's record when they were in office, when it came to the economy, was dismal, absolutely dismal. And when it came to managing a budget, it was also dismal, Mr Speaker. And that is why we have spent the last 5 years and more cleaning up the economic and financial mess that was left to us by the Labor Party. And the good news for the Australian people is, yes, we said we'd stop the boats and we did. Yes, we said we'd get rid of the carbon tax and we did. And yes, we said we'd bring the budget back into balance. And in April, we will deliver on that promise as well.
The member for Wentworth.
My question to the Prime Minister. Many Australians are concerned about the privacy of their health data, as there is no more important or sensitive personal information. Despite improvements in privacy protection passed by this House this week, there remains massive scope for the monetisation of this data through third-party use. Will the Prime Minister guarantee to provide the business case for the My Health Record database to this House in this sitting fortnight? This will be the final opportunity before the opt-out period ends on the 31st of January 2019, and the Australian people need to be assured about the true intentions of this program.
The Prime Minister has
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I thank the member for her question. I'll ask the Minister for Health to respond.
the Minister for Health.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker, and I want to acknowledge and congratulate the member for Wentworth on her election, and also thank her for joining many members of the House this morning at the World AIDS Day breakfast, where a new medicine, Juluca, for over 860 patients with HIV was announced, and a new testing equipment, self-testing, for the first time was there. With her history, I particularly acknowledge that. In relation to the My Health Record, legislation was passed unanimously through this House this week on Monday, and I am very happy to inform that that included a guarantee that My Health Record would be in public ownership forever. There is no scope for revenue. There is no revenue which will be raised. I have confirmed again today with the Deputy Secretary in charge of financial matters within the Department of Health that there is no revenue that has been or is projected from My Health Record. So I'm happy to provide a guarantee that there is no capacity, there is no projection, and there is no revenue that is anticipated. I'm also happy to provide the very documents which she is seeking. The way it's framed by the Australian Digital Health Agency is the My Health Record expansion program's benefits measurement and the benefits measurement approach, and also the corporate plan. Those documents address the very issues which she raises. More broadly, I would note that in terms of the benefits, this is about helping the 230,000 people in Australia who have some form of medication misadventure or medication clash, avoid those clashes to ensure patients have direct access to their own records. And as her successor at the AMA, the current president of the AMA, Tony Bartoni, wrote only very recently, the electronic record can save lives, and as the Consumer Health Forum said only yesterday, we believe that the amended measures protecting My Health record users will assure the benefits of a national health record system will reach many more people more quickly, particularly those with chronic and complex conditions who rely on an accurate record of their medication, diagnostic tests and treatment. I think that's a perfect summary of the benefits with the record.
The member for Dawson.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for Infrastructure, Transport and Regional Development. I note that next year our government is handing down a surplus budget that is a product of a strong economy. This means we can invest in local infrastructure projects that Australians can rely on without increasing taxes. How would a different approach to managing the economy impact the delivery of these essential infrastructure projects, including in my electorate of Dawson?
The Deputy Prime Minister has the call.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Next year the Liberal and Nationals government will hand down a surplus, which is a product of a strong economy. I hear the member for Sydney yelling out surplus. You might consult the Macquarie Dictionary. It's in there. I know you don't know exactly what that word exactly means. It's between short change, which is what Labor's intending to do to retirees, and tax, which is what you intend to do to all Australians. Surplus is in the dictionary. Look it up, you'll understand what the meaning is. And what a surplus does provide, it means that we can fund the essential services that Australians rely on. That's what you can do when you have a strong economy, which is what we've got at the moment. And it's what you can do without increasing taxes. Essential services such as water security, which is what the member for Dawson asked me about. More water means more jobs. More water means more business confidence in Mackay and elsewhere across the nation. More water means more opportunities to grow food and fibre, and our farmers, they grow the best food and fibre in the world. Liberals and Nationals support Townsville's future development and continued growth. And no matter what you're doing in regional Australia, whether you're a farmer, a small business owner or whatever, you need water security, you need long-term water supply. And thanks to the Liberals and Nationals' strong economic management, we're securing Townsville's water supply. This government understands the importance of water security for our regions, and that's why last week we announced an additional $500 million, $500 million for the National Water Infrastructure Development Fund. And as well as the existing $2 billion loan facility, more than $3 billion is now available to state and territory governments to help build water infrastructure. We're backing Queenslanders, backing them all the way. We're building dams, we're delivering tax cuts, we're building infrastructure, and we're backing small business. Yes, we are, Member for Watson. You wanted to pinch the water from our irrigators. We're getting on with the job of piping Australia, plumbing Australia, making sure that Australia is more drought-proof. Mr Speaker, we're also investing in the Hewenden irrigation system and Hells Gate dams. This is action. Action to secure Townsville's water supply for decades to come. Action because the member for Dawson and the LNP candidate for Herbert, Phillip Thompson, have fought hard for this project, and we know how important it is for the region. Action because you can't grow a city, you can't grow a region, you can't grow food, you can't grow fibre, you can't grow confidence without reliable water. Now, the CSIRO recently conducted the Northern Australian Water Resource Assessment, and this identified three catchments, looked at three catchments, the Darwin, the Fitzroy and the Mitchell, identifying 6 potential dam sites. Now, we'll certainly look at that as part of the Water Infrastructure Development Fund, and we'll look at those potential dam sites. And you know what? We'll get on and we'll build dams. We'll pipeline Australia. We'll make sure that we drought-proof this nation. You just talk about it. We get on and we actually do something.
Time has concluded. The Manager of Opposition Business.
Thanks, Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. Can the Prime Minister confirm that just this week the government lost Wentworth on Monday, lost Chisholm on Tuesday, and it was reported on Wednesday that it's about to lose Hughes? Is this why the Prime Minister has a policy to have a part-time parliament? Because he can't bear the consequences of having all the members of the government in the one place at the same time.
The Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, it's an interesting fact that on less than half of the opportunities that the opposition has to actually ask questions in place, they're not about policy. They're not about what's happening in this country. It's all about politics and smear. They're interested in their political games. They're interested in the good old Canberra bubble, Mr Speaker. That's what they're interested in. What they're not interested in is what is actually happening in this place and the work that is being done. Whether it's the work that is being done to support our farmers through the drought, because we have been getting on the job of extending that assistance to shires and councils all around the country. Mr Speaker, they're missing the point when they don't understand that the laws that we introduced into this place this week, which is what we've been focused on, to ensure that we can have, as Australian Citizenship Act amendment, that will mean that those who commit terrorist attacks in this country and they are convicted of them, that they will have their citizenship stripped. That's what we've been focused on. We've been focusing on this week announcing, like last night, that if you're between 21 and 24, you will get access to the adult apprenticeship scheme. And 4,000 worth of support to you to be in that position, which is a gap that has been created and that we've filled. We're announcing last night that we could ensure that small businesses would get access to free advice to deal with their complaints and issues when they're working them through with the ATO. We've been taking action on the securitisation fund to ensure that small business can get access to cheaper finance from more lenders. This is what our government is doing. The Labor Party doesn't come in here and talk about policies that make the economy stronger. They don't even ask about policies that could make the economy stronger, Mr Speaker. They just come in here and think all they have to do, full of hubris, full of arrogance, full of the swagger that you're used to seeing with the cocky union militant official walking onto the site, walking up to a small business owner and telling them how it's going to be, Mr Speaker. That's what the Labor Party are proposing for the Australian people. They're swaggering around electorates all around the country and they're going to be changing it all. Mr Speaker, if they get the opportunity to win the next election. A 45% emissions reduction target that will wipe out industries across this country, including aluminium smelters up in Gladstone and in Boyne Island, Mr Speaker. That's what their proposal is, to slug retirees with a $5 billion a year retiree tax for the simple fact that they went and bought Australian shares, that they are going to wipe out negative gearing, as we know it today, and increase capital gains tax by 50% at a time when our housing markets have eased off and are going through a soft landing. The Labor Party's plans for our economy are a big change, and the Australian people need to have it explained to them why Labor wants to change things so much.
The member for Tangney.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Jobs, Industrial Relations and Women. I note that next year our government is handing down a surplus budget that is a product of a strong economy. This means that we can support small businesses in industries Australians rely on without increasing taxes. How would higher taxing approach hurt small business owners, including in my electorate of Tangney?
The Minister for Jobs, Industrial Relations and Women.
I thank the member for Tangney for his question, and I thank him for his strong and passionate advocacy on behalf of the more than 15,000 small and family-sized businesses in his electorate. And I got to see that firsthand when I visited him last week, and he was able to advocate with me the government's plan to reduce taxes for small, medium and family-sized enterprises. Because on coming into government, we have reduced the tax rate for them from 30% down to 25% for 2021. This is great great news for the more than 3.3 million small, medium and family-sized enterprises. And it is because we have a sustained commitment to them, because we understand that they are the engine room of the Australian economy. Whether it's extending the $20,000 instant asset write-off, whether it's slashing red tape to ease their compliance costs, whether it's establishing the $2 billion Australian Business Securitisation Fund to lower the cost of funding, we know that it is important for small business to be able to get on with their business, to be able to invest in their business so that they can employ more Australians. More than 7 million Australians currently employed by small and medium-sized businesses. But we are not resting on our laurels. The Prime Minister announced last night more support for these businesses right around the country, making it easier for them to be able to settle tax disputes with the Australian Taxation Office, making it cheaper and quicker. And we do that because we recognise that we must make it easier for business, small business, to get on with employing other Australians. But of course those opposite would make it harder for them, because they have a reckless approach, a high taxing approach to small, medium and family-sized enterprises. Those opposite would in fact make it much more difficult for them to employ Australians, because they have a plan to increase their tax, more than $200 billion worth of new taxes that they would hammer the economy with. This would hurt their suppliers, their employees, customers and their families. Taxes on investments, on saving, on superannuation, and let us not forget the mega retiree tax. Australians can trust that the coalition will continue to deliver a stronger economy, will continue to deliver budget surpluses and record job growth, and we can do that without raising taxes. The only thing that the Leader of the Opposition can be trusted to do is to put his hand in your pocket and take more money out.
The Leader of the Opposition.
Mr Speaker, I move that so much of standing orders be suspended as to prevent the Leader of the Opposition from moving the following motion immediately. That the House 1 notes that since moving on Malcolm Turnbull, the government has A, cancelled Parliament because it couldn't decide who should be Prime Minister, B, lost 2 government members with at least 1 more on the way, C, been forced into minority government, which the government previously said would create instability in our economy and instability for the country, D, created the first part-time parliament in the history of federation by scheduling just 10 sitting days in 8 months, E, cancelled the Treasurer's trip to the G20, F, voted for a National Integrity Commission even though it doesn't support one, G, voted against tougher 15-year jail sentences for corporate criminals, H, abandoned the National Energy Guarantee, a policy which was designed by the Treasurer, which the Prime Minister promised would lead to lower electricity prices and which the member for Curtin still supports. And I, been described by the Minister for Women as homophobic, anti-women, climate change deniers, and J, been described by its own Prime Minister as the Muppet Show. And 2, therefore calls on this ramshackle, reactionary government to stop fighting itself and start focusing on the needs of the Australian people. Australians are outraged, Mr Speaker, that this government is too scared to turn up to Parliament, with the Parliament just sitting after it rises in the next week for 10 days in the next 8 months. The rest of Australia doesn't get to take months and months off work when it feels scared about coming to work. So why is the Prime Minister insisting on a part-time parliament? I believe that this part-time parliament and confirms that we have a part-time Prime Minister running a part-time government and not at any time in the interest of the Australian people. The Prime Minister is fond of saying, if you have a go, you'll get a go. But obviously it doesn't include you need to go to work to have a go. What a work-shy government. I've wondered what would happen to members of the CFMEU if they ran an industrial action campaign and proposed in the lunch shed one morning, I have a great idea, let's only go to work for 10 days in the next 8 months. Now, they would probably be sacked, and indeed this government would like to put them in jail. But it's one standard for the Morrison ministry and another standard for the workers of Australia. Who on earth in Australia gets to say that I'm not happy with my job today or next week, so I won't come for the next 8 months except for a total of 10 days? The Australian people, in all seriousness, are our employers. They remain deeply unimpressed that they have a government of parliamentarians who seek the people to vote for them to be in parliament, but once they've voted for them to be in parliament, those Liberal and National parliamentarians feel no obligation to actually report to parliament. The part-time parliament, however, points to a bigger issue. This is a government which has simply ceased to govern. Not only have they given up governing, they've given up pretending to govern. They have no agenda and no legislation. They're just swept along by the currents of hate and division in the river which is the government coalition ranks. For example, an example of what demonstrates their lack of an agenda or a lack of commitment to an agenda is that on Monday they voted in favour of a National Integrity Commission. We thought this was a positive development because they had rejected our ideas for a year to have a National Integrity Commission. But then as we explored the logic of this government by question time, the Prime Minister told us that an Integrity Commission and the issue of integrity in Parliament is a fringe issue. Then furthermore, he couldn't explain if he actually supported one or not, but they did implausibly say that one of the problems with having a National Integrity Commission is it might mean that ABC journalists would be picked upon by that commission. You could see the fingernail marks and the marble from the blue carpet of the executive section of the Parliament as they were dragged to vote for this National Integrity Commission. But the reason why they voted for it is they were scared of the debate. We should have seen on Monday a forecast of things which would have come. They don't want to be in Parliament, even though they collect the wages of people who are expected to go to Parliament. But there is a second reason other than their lack of agenda and their inability to do anything other than respond to events why they don't seek to be in Parliament. There is another reason. The reason why this government doesn't like to turn up to work is because those in the government can't stand being in the same city as their other colleagues in government, much less be in the same room. Australians are confronted with the sorry sight of a part-time parliament because this government has a full-time obsession with fighting amongst themselves. The parliament is part-time under this Prime Minister, but the civil war in the Liberal Party is a full-time occupation. The ramshackle reactionary coalition sitting opposite are so consumed by some form of existential identity crisis, some bizarre debate about what it means to be a real Liberal. They watch and re-watch the old footage of John Winston Howard and they roll him out in some sort of, video to prove that they were once Liberal. They reinter the speeches of the 70-year-old Menzies era as some sort of Ouija board to help give them advice as they go forward in their current crisis. They talk to themselves about themselves in conservative echo chambers. They pontificate about this mythical right-wing base and they write off whole communities as irrelevant. Don't worry, they say. Batman isn't the real Australia. Perth is not the real Australia. Fremantle is not the real Australia. Mayo is not the real Australia. Braddon isn't the real Australia. Longman isn't the real Australia. Wentworth isn't the real Australia. And Victoria isn't the real Australia.
Members on my left.
Rather than face up to their failures of policy, rather than to change their out-of-touch attitudes, rather than take responsibility for the cuts and chaos, they prefer to engage in conspiracy theories. Yet again, we saw it on the front pages of the Australian newspaper. The Conservatives see the invisible hand of Malcolm Bligh Turnbull in every decision, like this Tiberius with a Twitter handle. You have to feel for Malcolm Turnbull, and I'm sure some of you do now. He must be wondering, how come he never had this kind of mythical, Kaiser Soze-like influence when he was the Prime Minister of Australia. And the economic shift is extraordinary too. After all, the Liberal Party used to believe in the invisible hand. They used to be the party of the invisible hand. Now they are scared of the invisible hand. They blame everything for going wrong. The problem is, as humorous as it might be at one level, the nation is tired of this government. I stood on the polling booths in Victoria, and whilst all credit goes to Premier Andrews, and there were many state issues, the truth of the matter is, when you see polling booths in Flinders down at Nepean State electorate, or in Kooyong at Hawthorn, or in Higgins in Malvern, and you see people who've only ever voted Liberal in their life, and they say, when is the federal election? You know that this is a government who is not only scared of the parliament, they are scared of the Australian people. And for good reason they should be scared, because Australians want more than the chaos of the government, the division of the government, the dysfunction of the government and the internal hatreds of the government. Labor knows that in the path of which you have adopted, the Australian people will resoundingly reject policies which come from a government which is based on fear. The only argument that this desperate government has is they simply say that we are not Labor. But what they failed to do is they personalise this dispute. I thought even as remarkable as the part-time parliament was when the Prime Minister said it's all about me and him. No, Prime Minister, it's about the Australian people. It is about the penalty rates that you won't restore. It is about the school funding promises you broke and will not keep. It is about the growing out-of-pocket costs for healthcare and for X-rays and diagnostic imaging. It is about the fact that you won't give 3-year-olds universal preschool. It is about the fact that you have 120,000 people on aged care. It is about the fact that you want to hand on to the next generation inadequate action on climate change. It is about the fact that you ignore rising power prices because of your obstinate denial of climate change. We will look forward to the next election, but what we say about it is to this government in the meantime, do not be a part-time parliament, show respect to the people and turn up to work and do your day job until the people get to evaluate your job at the next election.
Is the motion seconded? The Manager of Opposition
You wanted to
Business.
second it?
Is the motion seconded?
I second the motion, Mr Speaker. Look at what they've become. Look at what they've become. Let's not forget what we were told before they became the government. Let's go back 6 years to what they told us a Liberal National Party government would be like. And I hear right now, what did they say about a surplus budget back then? Joe Hockey said
Members
this.
on my right.
Joe Hockey said this. He said, we will deliver a surplus budget in our first budget and every budget after that. Well, since then, they've doubled Australia's debt and taken it to $500 billion and now are boasting that maybe in the financial year after the next election, they'll for the first time fulfil what they said they'd do before they ever came to government. That's where they're at now. Because the first Prime Minister they tried on, the first Prime Minister they had to go with, he started by saying, we can now bring back adult, stable government. That's what he said. That's what he said. Stable government he'd be able to deliver. And I guess it might not have been stable, but it's been consistent, because the number of Prime Ministers is 3, the number of Treasurers is 3, and the number of Deputy Prime Ministers is 3. There's been a consistency of what they've done, but it has been the opposite, the exact opposite of what Liberal Party voters thought they were going to get when this mob were elected. They promised cabinet government. That was one of the things they said they'd deliver. Proper, orderly cabinet government. Well, there's an embassy decision. There's an embassy decision that you might have thought you would have had a cabinet submission for. An embassy decision where you just might have thought maybe we should let the security agencies know before we announce this one. No process. Nothing other than, from the Prime Minister in this dispatch box, oh, our candidate told us it would be a good idea. with all the resources of government and all the things they told us they would be. The Leader of the House, time and time, every time the parliamentary program was brought down, would say, the House is not sitting enough. He'd tell us each time when he was here as Manager of Opposition Business, the Parliament, you're running scared if you're not willing to have the Parliament sit. It's a test of whether or not you're a government. And now, for the first time since 1901, the Parliament is planning to only sit for 10 days in an 8-month period. And I know a lot of the debate has been, oh, maybe that's because they're scared of the numbers on the floor of Parliament, but we miss the other point, of course, that every time the Parliament meets, the party room meets. And when the Prime Minister says to us, oh, you're all getting so cocky, you know, you all think that we're going to be able to beat a Morrison government, we don't even know if we'll be against a Morrison government. All the indications and the little publicity stunts from the people who are a little bit more popular than the Prime Minister raise a whole lot of questions, and I can understand why they want to reduce the number of party room meetings between now and the election. We're also told that if they won, there'd be no cuts to health, no cuts to education, no changes to pensions, no cuts to the ABC. Every single one of them untrue. But perhaps we don't need to be able to go through our critique of them, because in truth, the brutality of our critique of them doesn't match their critique of them. Because the newspaper articles that we're reading now, it's really hard to get a Labor Party quote in, because we're competing with every anonymous backgrounder from the front bench and the back bench, and their language is so much more colourful than us. I mean, having promised adult government, you then get a Prime Minister describing his own mob as the Muppet Show. It wasn't us who described the Minister for the Environment as being on L plates. It was one of their own senators. It wasn't us who ridiculed the Leader of the House as being a legend in his own lunchtime. It was the man sitting next to him, the Treasurer of Australia. But when the Prime Minister seeks to describe, oh, who cares about the real issues and what sort of work are people doing here? This is a Speaker's list that's being distributed on the debate that's in the chamber right now. That's a list of Labor speakers. One person speaking for the government's own bill. The bill is the Fair Work Amendment Family and Domestic Violence Leave Bill. Now, it's not that their backbench isn't busy. They're on the phone. They're ringing the people up there. They've got lots to say about the government, but very little to offer the Australian people.
Time has concluded. The Prime Minister has the call.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Well, they're very pleased with themselves, aren't they? They're very, very pleased with themselves, Mr Speaker. But what I know has happened under this government is there's more Australians turning up to work under this government than ever happened under their government, Mr Speaker. There's more Australians who have a job today as a result of the policies that we have been putting in place from the day we were elected that ever happened under their government, Mr Speaker. There's 50,000 fewer people on the unemployment list today than there were at the last election, people. There are more Australians turning up to work under the Liberal and National parties than could ever turn up under work, Mr
Deputy
Speaker,
Leader of the Opposition
under the Labor
will cease
Party.
interjecting.
Under our government's policies, Mr Speaker, unemployment has fallen to 5%. Under our government's policies, we've had the strongest growth in the median wage in the last 13 years. Wow. We have had the strongest growth in non-mining investment, the continuous growth record in 30 years, Mr Speaker. Under our government and what we have been doing, we have the lowest level of welfare dependency of working-age Australians in 25 years and more, Mr Speaker. Under our government and under the policies and the convictions and the principles of the Liberal and the National parties, more Australians are getting into work and less Australians are going onto welfare. That is the product of a government that understands and believes that the best form of welfare is a job. It is the product of a government that believes absolutely that if you have a go, you will get a go, Mr Speaker. They are the policies which say that you should keep more of what you earn because you have worked incredibly hard for it. and that is the policies of this government. And that is why, as a government, from the day we're elected, we have been setting about the plan that has been making Australia stronger, that has been making Australia safer, and that has been bringing Australians together. Our plan, which we have been implementing, is tax relief to encourage and reward hard-working Australians. $144 billion worth of tax relief, which means, Mr Speaker, that more than 90% of Australians will not pay a marginal rate of 32.5 cents or more than that. 32.5 cents and less, that is what the majority of Australians will face under the legislated tax plans of our government, means that Australians going to work today on a middle income over the next 10 years will not see bracket creep, the vast majority of them, for their entire working life. When you believe that Australians should keep more of what they earn, you believe in reducing taxes for all Australians. You don't hold the view that to give tax relief for some, you've got to come and pull others down, Mr Speaker. That is the dangerous politics of envy that can only come from a Labor Party that is intent on driving division throughout this country. Division in our workplaces, division between parents as they stand on the sidelines watching their children's play sport. They want to set parents who send their children to state schools against parents who send their children to non-state schools, Mr Speaker. The Labor Party has a plan to divide this country. The Labor Party has a plan to undermine the very principles of a fair go that has made this country the strong, united, vibrant country that it is today. And Australians, I believe, will get the opportunities to see that between now and the next election. They will know absolutely when they go to the next election that the leader of the Labor Party and the Labor Party wants to disrupt the living standards of Australians by imposing their ideological and reckless agenda on the Australian people, but not this side of the House. Not the Liberal Party, not the National Party. We are providing tax relief to Australians, and we're providing tax relief to hard-working small and family businesses. It is our government that has brought forward and implemented the tax cuts for small and family businesses, bringing it down to 25%. It's our government that introduced the instant asset write-off to ensure that small businesses, ploughing back into their businesses, working hard in their business, could keep more of what they earn and could invest in the equipment that makes a difference. It is our government that raised this definition of a small business from $2 million to $10 million, liberating thousands and thousands of businesses to ensure, Mr Speaker, that those small businesses could get the cash flow benefits of pool depreciation and doing GST on a cash basis. Now, this is real policy I'm talking about here. I don't know what the Labor Party is talking about, Mr Speaker, but I know on this side of the House, when we come here, we talk about real policies, policies that make a difference, that are being legislated and are being implemented to ensure that we can enrich the small and family business culture of this country. Correct. The Labor Party doesn't understand small business because there aren't many union employees in small business, Mr Speaker. It is one big blank vacant space when it comes to the Labor Party. They disrespect their contribution to Australia and they disregard the interests that are so important to them. It's our government that has ensured that more than 90% of times bills of $1 billion and less are being paid within 30 days by the Commonwealth Government, and on the 1st of July next year that's coming down to 20 days. And more than that, at the end of this year I'll be asking all the states and territories not only to match our commitment to 20 days, but New South Wales Government's commitment to 20 days, because you know, if you're a small business, you shouldn't be used as a bank by large businesses, and you shouldn't be used by a bank by government, state or federal. And we're taking action on that. And we're calling on all large businesses through a transparency initiative to ensure that the payment business of large business is on record so small businesses know who they can do business with. And, Mr Speaker, next year, on the 2nd of April, our government will deliver the first surplus budget in 12 years. In 12 years, Mr Speaker. That's what our government is going to be doing, because we've got expenditure under control, the lowest spending growth of any government in 50 years, in 50 years and more, and we've got taxes under control. And that budget is coming back into balance because of the work we have done to manage that budget carefully and to grow our economy by doing things like investing in infrastructure, in liberating and supporting our science and technology sectors so they can grow and they can flourish with the investments that we're making, and to ensure that we're recognising our traditional sectors in agriculture and resources, in mining. Mining and resources is a dirty word to the Labor Party, Mr Speaker. It's a dirty word to those in the Labor Party, but we know that those who make steel, that those who make steel out of the resources that are mined in this country have real jobs that deserve protecting and deserve recognition. The Labor Party has sold out the resources and mining and steel production industries and aluminium smelting industries of this country, and they've done that by embracing reckless policies that will continue to drive up electricity prices under the reckless policies of the Labor government. We're guaranteeing the funding for schools, for hospitals, for affordable medicine, for the National Disability Insurance Scheme, for the pension, for the disability support pension, because, Mr Speaker, the only way you can look the Australian people in the eye and tell them that you can guarantee the support that we're guaranteeing them is when you can back it up with the fiscal management, the financial management and the economic policies that deliver in season and deliver out of season, Mr Speaker. And that's why we can back our farmers in the middle of the drought. That's what we've been focusing on. We've been focusing on those sectors that support the living standards and support Australians on a daily basis. So we are delivering across all of these areas. We're focused on policy. We're focused on a strong economy. We're focused on keeping Australians safe, Mr Speaker, not following on national security, but leading on national security, ensuring that we're delivering the laws and the powers, and we're kicking out the druggies who are selling drugs to our kids. We're kicking out the bikies, Mr Speaker, who roll up at the CFMEU conferences at will and run the numbers for Labor Party members, Mr Speaker, all across the country. No wonder they weren't cancelling visas for bikies and criminals, Mr Speaker. We've cancelled 3,000 visas for bikies and criminals and suspected terrorists in this country because we take these things seriously. The member for Watson posed the question, what was put to the people back in 2013? I'll tell you what was put to the people. The member for Warringah will remember it very, very well. What we put to the people in 2013 was we would stop the boats, and we stopped the boats, Mr Speaker. We said that we would get rid of the carbon tax, Mr Speaker, and we got rid of the carbon tax, and the Labor Party now wants to bring back a carbon tax, Mr Speaker. And we said we would bring the budget back into a surplus, and on the 2nd of April next year the Australian people will see that we will deliver that surplus budget, which demonstrates that only the Liberal and National parties can be trusted to run a strong economy that guarantees the essential services that Australians rely on without the higher taxes of the Labor Party.
Order. The time allotted for this debate has concluded. The question is that the motion moved by the Leader of the Opposition be agreed to. All those of that opinion say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. I think the noes have it. Division required. Ring the bells for 4 minutes. Yeah. Lock the doors. Order. The question is that the motion moved by the Leader of the Opposition be agreed to. The ayes will pass to the right of the chair, the noes to the left. I appoint the honourable members for Lawler and Morton tell us for the ayes, and the honourable members for Murray and Gray tell us for the noes. Order. The result of the division is ayes 66, noes 68. The question is therefore negatived. Members could take their seats. Question time can resume. Members on both sides. Members on my left. The member for Warringah.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister.
Members on my left. Members on my left. Members on my left. The member for McEwen. Member for Grindler. The member for Warringah.
Can the Prime Minister confirm that the Queensland Government intends to abolish the Family Responsibilities Commission? Can the Prime Minister tell the House the impact this will have on the communities of Cape York, where these commissions have done so much to improve school attendance and improve family cohesion? What is the government going to do to ensure that these communities once more have their right to take responsibility restored?
The Prime Minister has the call.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the member for Warringah for his question and his career-long commitment to ensuring that Indigenous Australians can realise their full potential, and his support for policies that have always ensured that communities can have their sovereignty in dealing with the many challenges that they face. The Queensland Government's unilateral decision to close down the Families Responsibilities Commission is deeply troubling, Mr. Speaker. It is deeply, deeply troubling. The
Member
Cape
for
York
Isaacs can leave under 94.
and the people of Cape York welfare reform communities of Arakoon, Cowan, Hopevale, Mossman Gorge have been at the cutting edge of addressing welfare dependency and school attendance in this country, and I commend all of those who have been part of that community-led approach. The Family Responsibilities Commission is a model centred on the community that supported the restoration of the local Indigenous authority. The FRC is acknowledged as the most critical component, Mr. Speaker, of the CYWR, and the FRC conferences encourage individuals and families to engage in positive behaviours whilst promoting the interests, rights and well-being of children and vulnerable community members. The positive impact on communities has been driven by the excellent work of the local commissioners. Taking such a strong stance against antisocial behaviour has been a very challenging and demanding commitment for these leaders. However, they have stuck fast to their vision of strong communities and that are free from the welfare trap. We should also commend them for the amazing work and their resilience. The profound damage arising from the Queensland Labor Government's decision to not reappoint commissioners or continue to fund and support the Families Responsibility Commission will end over 10 years of critical work that has been improving the lives of Indigenous Australians in these communities. Minister Scullion has written to the Treasurer of Queensland urging her to reconsider what I would describe as a foolhardy decision to abandon the Families Responsibility Commission. He has repeatedly indicated the Commonwealth's government's support for the FRC. It is the most critical component underpinning the Cape York welfare reform agenda. We have been unable, Mr. Speaker, to commit further funding to the FRC while the Queensland Government, whose legislation the FRC is established under was not clear whether the FRC would continue. We wanted to invest more in these communities, Mr Speaker. We wanted to support more of these kids to get into school. We wanted to support local Indigenous community leaders to continue to get in their communities and to set the standards so they could lift their own people and take them forward, Mr Speaker. That's how we believe social welfare policy should be implemented on the ground, in partnership with communities and not making excuses, Mr Speaker, when it comes to the things that have to be done in these communities. So I have strongly supported and do strongly support the Families Responsibility Commission, and I will urge the Queensland Government to reconsider.